Hello, NBA fans, and welcome back to the NBA Outlet presented by OTG Basketball. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on iTunes and give us a follow on Twitter at OTG Basketball. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, my good man, Kory Waldron. What's up, Kory?
What's up, Nick? Just when we thought the NBA offseason was winding down, there wasn't going to be any noise, they drop a bomb on us.
They drop a bomb in it. Yeah, you're right. We haven't had any real news. Obviously, Kyrie requested a trade a few weeks ago, but now he's traded. And it comes to a surprise. We did not expect this team to be the trade partner, and it was the Boston Celtics. Kyrie Irving was traded for Isiah Thomas, Jae Crowder, and Ante Zizic, and the Brooklyn Nets 2018 unprotected pick. So initially, what were your thoughts on this trade? Did anybody come out with a win, or is this a trade that works out for both parties?
Well, first, I'm going to say just wow, because, the whole offseason, the Celtics getting, Gordon Hayward, trading for Marcus Morris, Isiah Thomas, like there was a Snapchat of him dancing in his kitchen once they signed Gordon Hayward. It just felt like we were getting ready for the Boston Celtics going at the Cleveland Cavaliers as they were, battling for that top spot in the East to go against, the Giants that we know that are in the West with the Warriors. And then, the biggest threat to the Cavs just stole the Cavs player, and the Celtics gave up, their all-star MVP caliber point guard Isiah Thomas, a future draft pick. It's just crazy to think that two teams that were set on battling, they battled all last year. They're set to battle this year. They're gonna battle this year. Just exchange their top players.
Yeah, it's definitely something you don't necessarily see, and I think this has something to do with the Warriors. Not to bring the Warriors into every conversation, but the Cavs don't really care about the Celtics. They just care about being able to have a shot at Golden State and maybe getting a chance at LeBron to stay. From initial look at this trade, I think it does work out for both parties. Kyrie's a younger player that you're more okay giving the max than Isiah Thomas, and as we know, Isiah Thomas will be a free agent at the end of the year, so the Cavs will have a decision on him. But Jae Crowder's a nice piece to add to the Cavs. He gives them a solid role player that can really, give them something against Golden State. And also, obviously, bringing that Brooklyn pick, it might not necessarily be as high as we originally anticipated, but it should still be a lottery pick.
Yeah, I think when I look at this trade, who goes where, the Celtics, I think, got the best player in the deal, but I think the Cavs got the best deal. Only because, Isiah Thomas, they get out of the luxury tax, which is huge. The trade kicker, or I think the trade kicker for Kyrie, they don't have to pay any more of that money, obviously. They're out of the luxury tax. Isiah Thomas is only making $6 million a year. Jae Crowder's on a pretty friendly deal. I think it's right around $13 or $14 million a year. And then you have, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name. You have the Ante, who's, a young center. And then, like you said, they have the Nets 2018 first-round draft pick, which, we don't know if it'll be a top pick overall like last year, but we can guess it's going to be another lottery pick.
Exactly. And, it's just – and it's something that the Cavs had in that first-round pick, and I'm not necessarily thinking they're going to do this for sure, but it does give them a trade chip, something that they didn't really have other than Kyrie and Kevin Love. Now they have another piece that they could possibly move for a player. Not necessarily, a lock to get you a superstar, but it's not a trade asset that they did have in the past.
And another thing, not that I want to bring up the fact that LeBron could possibly leave on this podcast in particular, but, if LeBron does end up leaving, now you have that 2018 first-round draft pick. You still have Jae Crowder under contract. You still have Kevin Love under contract, Tristan Thompson. You could possibly bring in Isiah Thomas and re-sign him, and the Cavaliers can remain competitive without LeBron. I'm not saying they do that, but it's another possible route if you do lose LeBron James next year.
Yeah, and we remember what happened last time when LeBron left. That team was terrible. They did end up with a couple number one overall picks, but the team was still bad, and it kind of set up for LeBron to come back the next time. But I think this time they could keep Isiah Thomas, even though they'd have to dish out extra money and still remain competitive, like you said.
Yeah, it's definitely a move. Cleveland's definitely looking for the future more than right now, because I still don't believe this trade makes Cleveland any better. It just was able to get rid of, they gave Kyrie what he wanted. Kyrie wanted his own team, and if you look over on the Boston perspective, that's what he has now. I mean, he pretty much just got Isiah Thomas's role, and we know what Isiah Thomas was last year. He was the number one option. He averaged right around 30 points per game with 29. He's, not much of an assist guy. He gives you very little defense. Irving is probably a little bit better of a defender because of his size. Not as much of a playmaker, but he gives you the scoring, and he'll be able to take full range of that offense with, decent guys around him in Gordon Hayward, Marcus Smart, and Al Horford.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I could see how the Cavs might be a little bit better from this trade just because they add more depth with Jae Crowder. You mentioned this to me. It gives them somebody else they can throw to Kevin Durant or Klay Thompson. Defensively against the Warriors in the finals, they were terrible. They had nobody to match up. The only issue is Isiah Thomas is probably going to struggle a lot more against Golden State. And like you said, defensively, he's definitely an issue. IT, though, I wouldn't be surprised if would be willing to give more effort on defense. It's just his lack of size. People are always going to be able to shoot over somebody who's 5'8".
Yeah, and in a finals rematch, say we get a 4-peat, Stephen Curry on Isiah Thomas is probably the worst case scenario for the Cavs. And if you don't have Isiah Thomas, you have Derrick Rose. So
and who's maybe even worse defensively. So I mean,
Curry seeing this deal is probably licking his lips because he's thinking, all right, if I have to deal with them again, I have two guys I'm going to just steamroll for another 7 games.
So it's tough, and I think maybe the 2018 pick is a big part of this. Like you said, it kind of helps him in both ways for now and then the future a little bit. Obviously, Kyrie's a great player, but if he didn't want to play, and I said this to you, I think probably the meeting between Kyrie and LeBron didn't go that well, and that they kind of decided things aren't going to work out, so we need to move this guy. We don't know how long the trade's been in the works. Obviously, the reporters reported today they could have been working on this for a week, 2 weeks. We don't know.
Yeah, and it's also funny that it's another. Not that I'm gonna, we just mentioned again. It's funny that the Brooklyn Nets are involved in another trade to a degree because the Nets are technically not that they're involved, but they're involved at the same time with these draft picks. And it definitely came as a shock to me. I was at the gym while these notifications were running through my phone, and then Shams dropped the bomb on me before Waj did. It's just crazy to think that two rivals, and the best part is, Nick, the first game of the season, we're going to see these guys on the floor against each other.
Yeah, that is awesome. I mean, and like you said, it's rare that you see a 1 and 2 seed make a trade like this, especially exchanging star players. Usually in this trade like this would be one team going into a rebuilding type mode, but both of these teams are still looking to compete. There's a good chance these two teams are going to match up in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it just adds some more drama, and everybody loves that.
I think Boston got worse, though, Nick. I got to be honest. I don't know. I don't think this puts Boston over top of Cleveland. I think it's definitely a piece in the right direction because now you have a younger, a slightly better, I feel like, scorer. Even though the numbers don't show it to a degree, I think Kyrie Irving is the better. I mean, actually, I'm not gonna pussyfoot around this. Kyrie Irving is a better player than Isiah Thomas.
Yeah, I would take Kyrie over Isiah Thomas. I mean, there's obviously qualities you like about both guys, but I think you look at Kyrie's age, you're more willing to give a player his age, a max contract, and there's a chance he could improve defensively. And we never seen him in the role that he's going to be in, and we never seen him in a Brad Stevens offense. So not to say anything bad about Tyronn Lue, but Brad Stevens has done some really good things since joining the NBA. I'd like to see what happens. One thing I also like about Kyrie in Boston is that he fits their other timeline. This is a weird team because Boston is still now competing at a high level, but in the future they're set up to compete at even a higher level with Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and the other young players they have and the other picks they have, because the Brooklyn pick wasn't the only pick they had. There's other picks that they have in the future going forward that are really going to help them.
Well, the big pick to remember is they still have the Lakers' first-round pick for next year.
Yeah.
So they still have another lottery projected draft pick in the works.
Yeah.
I know I saw one thing that they plan on still targeting Anthony Davis. So this could still be, Danny Ainge moving around some chess pieces to get another prize possession. Because I don't think they're done yet because this team doesn't have enough defense anymore. Losing Crowder, the defense now is going to be the issue with Boston.
Something really ironic happened. I think I don't know when Brad Stevens said this. I think it was sometime this week or last week. He said he wants Jaylen Brown to really step up defensively and be like that lockdown type guy. And it was kind of maybe foreshadowing they were going to move Jae Crowder because I think Jaylen Brown could defensively be one of those type of players, and he showed that already in his young career. He just needs to get more disciplined and more focused. So Boston's definitely going to be a fun team to watch. You mentioned Anthony Davis. There's also been some chirping about maybe possibly Marc Gasol if the Grizzlies aren't really in the playoff hunt or they're in the bottom of the West. Obviously, Mike Conley and Marc Gasol aren't going to be enough to get you over the top in the West. So that could be another player they could be targeting. Anthony Davis could be a guy, but it's really tough to trade a player like Anthony Davis. But, this offseason we've seen more stars move than we have in 10 years.
We saw, and not just that, we saw stars being moved for a lot less than what you would picture their face value to be.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Starting, stemming from the Paul. I mean, this is probably the best, asset to asset. This is probably the best deal we've seen. We saw the DeMarcus Cousins trade at the deadline, the Paul George trade. I know there was another one, the Jimmy Butler trade. We've seen a lot of stars move this offseason. Probably more than I can't remember another offseason, Nick. I'm not sure if you can, where we saw these many all-stars and superstars, being moved around.
I can remember when I was playing 2K in the 9th grade and I was moving everybody to my team. That's the only time
you turn off trade sliders, so there's no cap, limitations.
But, you just don't see stars move like this. And I think you made a great point. I felt like the Cavs actually got good value for Kyrie, especially in the situation they were in. We don't know about the other offers, but, getting an all-star in Isiah Thomas, getting a great role player in Jae Crowder, and Ante, we don't really know. He's a young guy. We'll see what happens with him. But then the first-round pick with the Brooklyn pick, getting another lottery pick, is a big move.
I think what helps, because I was thinking about this off the pod, because I was comparing just the fact that, he demanded a trade, obviously. And we saw Paul
quote-unquote requested a trade.
Requested, right. We saw Paul George, even though Paul George came out and said, we'll talk about him in a second, he requested a trade. He requested or told ownership he was going to be leaving, which is very similar to what Irving did. But the good thing for the Cavs is Irving had these 2 years left on his deal.
Mm-hmm.
So, any team who's looking at Kyrie, they're not thinking this is a 1-year rental. They're thinking we have a 2-year pitch to keep him long term. And I saw somebody reported, I can't remember the reporter, I was just looking through my feed, and he said, Irving is ecstatic about being there, and that Boston only made this move because they are convinced after talking to Irving that he will stay long term.
I mean, it makes sense because, Kyrie Irving is the biggest star in that team. Gordon Hayward, he's a great player, but I think Kyrie's still the bigger star, and he has that popularity. And that was something that was brought up a lot, too, with the Kyrie trade talks, is that Kyrie brings star power to your team. Obviously, the Boston Celtics do just fine fan-wise, but adding more hype to that franchise is just great for them and kind of hopefully bringing them back to the promised land, they hope.
I think there's one issue that Boston could have, though, that we're still in the euphoria of this trade. Isiah Thomas was the heart and soul of this roster. Last
he was
year,
very loved by the team.
Yeah, and even the fans. I remember listening to Tom Heisner, or I think that's his name, the announcer. Every time Isiah would drive, the little guy, he became the face of the franchise within the last year. And, he was a big part of Gordon Hayward coming. I know Brad Stevens obviously was a huger part, but Isiah Thomas was at that meeting with Hayward. It just, you traded your star, and I just have to think that, Horford and the guys who were with him last year, that definitely leaves a weird taste in your mouth.
It definitely does, especially, bringing in Kyrie, who we don't know he's necessarily the same type of leader that IT was. If you look at it from a Celtics fan perspective, they probably lost 3 of their fan favorites this season. Isiah Thomas, Avery Bradley, and Jae Crowder. That's all players that Boston fans have loved. They play hard. They play, IT doesn't play defense, but Bradley and Crowder do. They get into it. They're gritty. IT has that grit. Obviously, we know what happened with his sister, sadly, during the playoffs and him playing the way he did. But I think at the end of the day, the reason that the Celtics were willing to pull the trigger on this trade is that the fact that Isiah Thomas is a free agent at the end of the year, and they did not want to give him a max contract.
Yeah, and just to throw one tidbit before I elaborate on what you just said, they actually lost 4 of their starters last year because they lost Amir Johnson to Philly as well.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a number 1 seed that is going back with only 1 returning starter from last year, which is also very strange, depending, just seeing how young this team was. But to piggyback on what you said about Isiah and the hip, just last season, I know his hip injury, that was a big issue with Boston. You said it off the pod. Hips are dangerous. Without having surgery, there's no way in telling how this is healed and how this will affect him next year, mobility-wise, and just moving around on the floor.
I'm kind of excited to see IT play with LeBron, though. I don't know why. I just like am really intrigued by the idea. I don't know. Like, obviously, Isiah Thomas had his best season last year, but LeBron always does some type of thing where he gets the best out of guys. So maybe IT expands his game a little bit. He's just like, it's kind of funny going to be seeing like, probably the Cavs' two best players next to each other, LeBron and IT, like at such different sizes in the way that they, impact the game. LeBron's kind of physical force, where IT is just like quick, speedy, and getting shots off at all different angles, where LeBron's kind of the guy that's going to overpower you with the muscle strength and athleticism.
Yeah, the one thing I can't say, too, to follow up on your point, Isiah Thomas always plays with a chip on his shoulder. And if he's able, bearing a setback or the hip injury becoming a regular thing or affecting him, we're going to see Isiah Thomas with a huge chip on his shoulder from being a face of a franchise to being traded away.
Exactly, especially after the season he had. He's probably like, yo, what else did you want me to do, bro?
Exactly. I mean, he had the nickname granted upon him, the King of the Fourth, after 2 months of the year where he was just lighting up every fourth quarter. And pretty much all of last season, up until the end, he was, I think, in the top 5 of points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's something, the Cavs have needed in the past. LeBron sometimes runs out of gas because they expect him to do so much in the first 3 quarters. We saw that in the final. So having a guy that comes out clutch in the fourth could be huge. But enough about that trade. We'll obviously probably even talk about it on a few more pods. But let's talk about something that's close to you, and that's Paul George and the Lakers and the Pacers. So there's been an investigation about the Lakers tampering with Paul George. Obviously, Paul George was not traded to the Lakers, but, there was plenty of reports this year saying after his free agency next season, he's going to sign with L.A. Magic Johnson was on an interview, and he, winked or something. And then there's been supposedly, calls to Paul George's parents or something like that. It's rare that you see it so publicly that he's, destined to go to L.A.
I mean, I think without question, we can both say that a lot of strange things happened around the Paul George and the Pacers. I'm not going to say the Lakers are guilty. That is yet to be proven, obviously. These are all still allegations. I do believe you're naive if you think tampering does not happen in the NBA.
Just look at Jeff Teague signing July 1st, soon as free agency started, before anybody else had a chance to sign him. He already agreed with the Timberwolves.
You're right. I think players talk. GMs talk. Magic Johnson being, a player, a retired player, a guy who was very involved in the NBA community before becoming the Lakers GM. It's not. I know him and Paul George have had conversations before in the past, and if that guy goes into power and becomes your GM, it's not crazy to think that he made some calls to other players. I wouldn't even say it's out of the realm to think that Magic Johnson and LeBron James have had talks about it. LeBron going to LA. It may not be in the public, but these guys all talk. And just like when LeBron went to Miami those years ago, do you think that just happened in free agency? No. Him and Melo, Wade, they had been talking about that for years about teaming up. And I'm sure as time became closer, the talks intensified. No different than last year with Kevin Durant joining the Warriors. That conversation between Kevin Durant and the Warriors wasn't in free agency. There had to have been talks right near, the end of the finals where Steph Curry and Draymond and Durant were all talking. It happens.
Well, I think that's also players are a little bit different, quote unquote. They can get away with it. It's more so when the teams are doing it, the general managers, the front office guys, and the executives are talking. That's when it's really frowned upon. But like we said, it happens across the league. I think it's going to be, in a sense, if the Lakers do get punished, it's going to be if it's proven, first off, and then second, how bad of tampering was it? Is it something that we see commonly in the NBA, that something that happens frequently, or is it something that's completely different and it's over the top and it really hurt the Pacers? The Pacers aren't going to get anything out of this. The only thing that's going to happen is the Lakers would be punished.
Yeah, I think what the Pacers want is just, I've been saying this a lot this year. I feel like this is the year of pettiness. This has to be petty season 2K18, just in general. It's been crazy this year. I think the Pacers, what their main goal in all of this is just so Paul George can be banned from joining the Lakers in the future. That's their only goal. They just want to make sure Paul George can't go to where he wanted to go, which is why I think they dished him off for that lesser deal to go to OKC.
It could be the case. I mean, that's a possibility. There has been some talk about a possible ban of Paul George signing with the Lakers next offseason, or the Lakers losing a draft pick, or the Lakers being fined, or all of the above. I think a lot of it's going to have to depend on the evidence. Obviously, this isn't like the NFL. They don't just suspend people for no reason, even if the evidence doesn't support it. Cough, cough, Ezekiel Elliott. But
I do want to say one. I want to just clarify my stance on this too. I personally, I don't care about these allegations. I don't care if Magic Johnson and Paul George had talks. The only thing that bothered me about this entire Paul George and Pacers situation was just how it was brought about. Just saying, I'm leaving in the media. I don't care if you want to tell the team you're leaving publicly or privately. It's just making it all public and ruining the leverage of the team. That was the only thing that really bothered me. The Lakers, what team wouldn't want to add a Paul George? And the Lakers having conversations, at the end of the day, it doesn't sway a player's decision to a degree. The player is still going to pick where he wants to go at the end of the day.
I think what you're looking at it from the Pacers or the other teams around the league is not, like you said, you're not going to really sway their decision. But if you're guaranteeing Paul George that you'll have a spot for him and you're going to pay him the money that he wants, it makes it a little bit easier for him to be I'll agree with you. It just makes things easier for the Lakers. I mean, personally, if I was a Pacers fan, I might be a little bit of a saltine cracker right now. I wouldn't be too happy about it. I wouldn't be too happy about the fact that we had to get, pennies on the dollar. But like we've said, tampering is something that happens in the NBA. It's a common thing. It's not something that never happens. So I think from what we would expect, I don't think they're going to get banned Paul George from signing with them, and I don't think they'll lose a pick. I think probably what's going to happen is maybe a fine.
And that not that a fine is any less of a punishment, but my personal opinion on fines are they're pretty much they're meaningless to me. We're talking about guys who have tons of money.
And we're talking about one of the most popular organizations in all the NBA and all of sports.
One of the richest organizations who are worth well over $1 billion.
They're probably close to 2+ in my opinion.
Right. And what's the fine going to be probably if we had to take a guess? $50,000 maybe.
Yeah, I don't even know. And whatever fine it is, it's not really going to have much of an impact.
It'll be laughable. It'll be laughable. So
yeah, and they could suspend maybe Magic Johnson or anybody in the front office who would technically communicate with him. But does the suspension of a front office guy really impact you that much in the beginning of the season? Not really.
No, but who knows? If Alvin Silver, this is actually probably one of the first controversial things he's going to have to deal with as commissioner. This is his chance to make a statement if he wanted to make one.
If the NBA did want to take a stance on tampering, I think this would be a time. But I think it's something it's almost impossible to monitor because you have players that are talking to each other, which is technically okay. Then you have agents who are talking to other agents. Then you have family members or quote unquote your people. Everybody has their guys that they stay with or their management people that are always talking to other guys. So I think it's almost impossible for the NBA to kind of put a lockup on tampering. Just don't get caught is what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than, drawing comparisons to the NFL, the Spygate situation with the Patriots. Every team, to a degree, spies a little bit. They try and pick up on other teams' strategies and stuff like that, but the Patriots got caught. And this could be one of the situations where the Lakers got caught.
And they just took it to another level over the top, and that's just something that, if you do, if you're a criminal and you're, getting away with doing something low level constantly, soon as you go to that next level and try to do something else, that's usually when you get caught. So I think I want to be calm down. We don't want to make this as public. If you guys do it, don't let it be seen.
I mean, honestly, this may, like just what you said, this may never have been the thing if Magic Johnson didn't have to do that wink on Jimmy Kimmel. If he had just said a couple comments and, left it at where it was, and, he had to go that, like you said, that little extra mile where he kind of let me do this wink thing. I've talked to him. What are you going to do about it kind of thing?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just always anything a little bit over the top. You don't want to see that as the NBA, and you don't want it to be a public thing. If they do it privately and no one really talks about it, it's not as big a deal. But when it becomes public and then it it really hurts. It doesn't really hurt the big market teams, the teams that are playing in LA, New York, Miami, teams like that. It's the teams like Indiana, those small market teams that aren't able to necessarily attract big time free agents. And when they lose a guy like Paul George, it really hurts.
Yeah, and that's who the Pacers, to a degree, are sticking up for. They're sticking up for the little guy. Because
I wouldn't be surprised if other owners have the Pacers back, or other managements around the league are like, this has kind of happened to us in the past, but it wasn't publicly, but we got your back.
No, I wouldn't be surprised because, think about a team like the Pelicans. A year from now, they could be facing the same situation. If a team like Boston, makes a push for Anthony Davis, or Anthony Davis says, I want to leave and this is where I want to go, or something like that in the media, it changes everything. We saw Dwight Howard do it. Well, Dwight Howard did it personally, but if you see teams actively shopping a player and a player buys into it, it's utterly chaos for some small market teams who can't pay the max dollar and build these super teams.
Exactly. We'll see what happens with that, and we'll definitely keep an eye. And I'm going to start counting down the days to October 17th so I can watch this Kyrie IT matchup. I cannot wait to see LeBron guard Kyrie Irving. Obviously, it's not going to be a regular thing in the game, but obviously at certain points we should see a Kyrie and LeBron matchup.
Can we make way too early predictions?
On that game? I'll let you swing.
Okay, so I'm going to say Cleveland wins that by 15, and Kyrie goes off for 40, but it's not enough.
Yeah, I think I don't even know why I'm making an early prediction. You got me into it. I'm going to go with the Cavs because I think LeBron's just like, bro, you wanted to leave my squad, the squad that's just been to the final 7 straight years, so you can quote-unquote have your own team. We'll show you what's good real quick. And I think the Cavs will take that one.
I feel like it's going to be one of those games where it will be like the media after to be like, wow, Cleveland is the best team in the East by far. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's one of those, like, the media will overreact type of games.
And especially because IT's going to have a chip. Jae Crowder's going to have a chip. I mean, Kyrie's only one dude. So, it's not like the rest of the Boston team hates the Cavs.
It will feel like a playoff game on October 17th.
Yeah, and people will overreact. They'll go way over the top, but it won't really mean as much as it'll seem like it'll mean at the time.
Without question.
All right, Kory, it was great talking to you. Great to get a little in here real quick before we're back to the NBA season. We'll get back to our previews. And as always, thanks everybody for listening.
A little OTG bomb.